Our Business from the Bench segment tonight. President-elect Trump has before him, once he's sworn into office, of course, not just the nomination of a Supreme Court justice to replace the late Antonin Scalia, but 104 total vacancies in federal courts. Needless to say, that's a large number. In fact, it's arguably large enough to reshape our entire federal courts. Joining me now to discuss what this means for U.S. law and order, legal affairs reporter at the Daily Caller News Foundation, Kevin Daley. Kevin, Merry Christmas.
Hey Liz, great to be with you. Merry Christmas.
It's good to see you. All right, Kevin, so there are 104 total vacancies on federal courts. 38 of these are judicial emergencies. Explain that to us quickly. What is a judicial emergency?
Sure, so a judicial emergency is declared by the U.S. Judicial Conference if the number of filings on a judge's docket exceeds a certain number. So basically what this means is there are 38 judicial posts around the country where the workload for other judges on the court has become so dramatic that the U.S. Judicial Conference considers it an emergency and would ask the Senate and the President to work together to fill that vacancy as soon as possible.
Why is this so backed up? 104 total vacancies, that's a lot. 38 of them considered to be an emergency. What made this so backed up?
Well, some of this has to do with the nature of the judicial confirmation process. It's a very slow process. When the Senate and the Senate Judiciary Committee in particular are working at their most efficient rate, they are holding a hearing maybe once every 2 weeks. And this is because staff in the Senate need sufficient time to vet a judicial nominee, and also traditionally the American Bar Association, a very powerful legal interest group, will weigh in on every nomination, and it also needs time to conduct confirmations, or to conduct just a background check. And the FBI as well conducts a background check, as is typical for many federal employees. So the process is a very involved one. And then lately things have also started to slow down because of our divided government. So President Obama and Republicans in the Senate have not necessarily worked well together in terms of filling these judicial confirmations, although hopefully many of these vacancies, particularly a number of them in Texas, Idaho, and Utah, where these emergencies are especially extreme, will be filled in the coming lame duck session.
Right, so essentially, just in short form here, maybe the politically incorrect form, what you're saying is this is a slow process because of bureaucracy, because the government just works slowly to implement this process. But Kevin, these 104 vacancies, one of course is the Supreme Court seat formerly held by Justice Scalia. Then there's 13 seats on federal appeals courts, 82 district courts, and 8 special jurisdictions. What do you expect from this? What would be the most controversial, the first priority here?
Well, really the first priority is, of course, going to be filling the seat on the U.S. Supreme Court. And while that presents a great opportunity for conservatives, the trouble is once that nomination for the Supreme Court gets moving, it's going to be very difficult to put forward nominees for these other judicial vacancies that are open. So while the Supreme Court vacancy does present a great opportunity for the Trump administration and a great opportunity for conservatives, it probably means we're going to have to put these other vacancies on hold because really the Senate's entire attention is going to be on the Supreme Court, and they're going to be less concerned with these lower court nominees.
Right, and I think we all expect, we're all in agreement in expecting the Supreme Court nomination to take several months. I mean, it should be one of the first things that Trump does in his first 100 days even, but if it takes a couple months to do that, we might not see any more appointments to any of these vacancies until midsummer.
That's exactly right, and realistically, we probably should not expect a ninth justice to join the court before its term ends in June. Presumably, the Trump administration is going to need a little time to get its ducks in a row on this confirmation. People close to Trump say that he's narrowed down the list to 5 or 6 candidates. People I've talked to have suggested that the universe of possible candidates is really down to 2 or 3, and we can talk about those candidates if you like. But after the Trump administration finds its sea legs, so to speak, the Senate is going to want considerable time to vet this nominee, and Senate Democrats have indicated they don't really feel the need to cooperate with Republicans on this because of how the GOP behaved with regards to the Merrick Garland nomination. So I don't think you're going to see real obstruction from the Democrats, but certainly they're going to be in no hurry to get this done.
Right, they're going to be fussy, I think is the proper word to use here. I do want to get to the particular candidates that are reportedly on Trump's shortlist here, but first let me ask your opinion on some of these other court things. There's a professor by the name of Carl Tobias.
Sure.
He's from the University of Richmond Law School. He's an expert in federal court selection, in judicial selection, I should say. He says the most meaningful selection could be on the 9th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals. Kevin, talk to me about that.
Sure. So the Ninth Circuit is the largest appeals court in this country, and it's also known as being a particular liberal court. It's a great bastion of progressive jurisprudence. And it interestingly is the appeals court that's most often overturned by the Supreme Court. There are currently 4 vacancies on that court, which is a considerable number. And so President Trump will have the opportunity to recast the direction of one of the most liberal courts in this country fairly early in his presidency. And there are some exciting names being floated out there for possible nominations to the Ninth Circuit, like Professor John Eastman of Chapman University Law School, a solid conservative and a great scholar who I think would be a wonderful addition to the court.
Right, and what a shocking coincidence that the most liberal-leaning circuit court is the one most often overturned by the Supreme Court here. Kevin, talk to me about these 2 to 3 candidates on Trump's shortlist. And I think this is very interesting because right now, of course, Trump only has 1 seat to fill, but potentially in the next 4 years, there could be up to 3 others that he needs to fill as well.
Yeah, that's true. So there are 3 justices who are over the age of 78. I myself am a little less bullish than other people. I don't think that President Trump will have more than one confirmation or one appointment to the Supreme Court in his first term unless one of those 3 justices dies. I think all 3 are taking their vitamins and plan to stick around for as long as they can. But the names that I'm hearing that a lot of people are talking about for the first appointment President Trump will have are Judge William Pryor from the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals and Judge Diane Sykes from the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals. Both were George W. Bush appointees to the federal bench. Both are young and both are considered to be solid originalists in the mold of Justice Scalia with really indisputably conservative records. Of those 2, I think that Judge Sykes makes a little bit more sense. Judge Pryor is a very fine jurist, but his critiques of some very controversial decisions in Supreme Court history, like Roe versus Wade, have been very blunt. For example, he's called Roe versus Wade the greatest abomination in constitutional law, and really wherever you come down on that decision, that certainly is the kind of thing that's inflammatory to Democrats. And in fact, getting him on the federal bench the first time was really a battle. It took about 2 years to get him confirmed. So I think that Judge Sykes makes a little more sense than Judge Pryor, but those are the 2 names that I've been hearing.
Right, and it sounds like if they're both originalists, that it's going to be an interesting time. Their confirmation hearings, either way, it's going to be very interesting. I mean, this is what Trump promised us when he talked about appointing a Supreme Court justice. He promised someone who would follow in the footsteps of Justice Scalia. So we'll have to see. Kevin, we're out of time, unfortunately, but thanks so much for being here.